Hello, hello, hello. I am Dr. Andrea Greiner.
And I'm Katie Corbin.
Welcome to the Dreams to Dollars podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs and professionals who are on their way to actualizing their dreams into reality.
Join us in this lighthearted and unique podcast where we talk about business, success, life, and building a deeper trust in God and the universe.
We are here to elevate the conversation and bring the magic to build your legacy.
We're excited for you to be here. Can't wait to dive in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we're going to be discussing a really interesting topic, a cool topic about expending your energy or energy expenditure for clarity and confidence in your business. Now, when we talk about energy, we're not just talking about you wake up every morning and you do your thing. It's almost like it's a deeper layer of energy, right? So if we talk about us as beings, we're actually energetic beings. And where we put our energy and our intention, right? Where we focus our energy and intention, that is going to flow. So that energy and intention is either going to flow into lack of clarity, being scattered, being frustrated, being, in this space of I don't know where I'm going, or you can kind of turn the gaze and focus the energy more on where can I get more clarity? How can I become more confident? How can I become more clear, not only in my business, my offers, but also in yourself, right? Because actually, as the CEO of our company, if we're driving the ship and we're the ones doing the steering of the ship, if we're not clear, we don't have to be clear 100% of the time, but if we're not clear the majority and confident in our business and our offers, then likely that ship is just going to be, steered by the sea ultimately. Right. So it's almost like the daily life is going to steer our ship. Like, oh, something happened and we can't focus back on our intent and what we're here to do. We're going to get lost in the energy is going to get lost in the daily life stuff. Like if some, stuff hits the fan and, things start to be chaotic, it's like, where is your focus going? Is it going into chaos and disruption and distress and frustration? Or is it going, wow, this is interesting that this is happening. How can I come back into more ease and more flow? And really through that is almost like more clarity and confidence, because you're going to be able to go like, oh, now I'm clear on the direction I'm headed. I'm able to foresee the next step that's going to lead me into the direction that I want to go. So this is almost a practice, right? It's actually a practice. And when do you get to practice this? Every freaking day of your business, right? So you actually can come into cultivation of this through the practice of turning the gaze and going back into focusing on what is working and what gives you more clarity and confidence versus going, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know the next step, and just contracting down into more of a chaotic and almost like that smallness, like I don't have the capacity to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is a big issue with dreamers, right? Here we are in Dreams to Dollars podcast, right? So we can have a really big vision. And Katie and I work a lot with clients that have big visions, right? And if we can get carried away with not like getting carried away. There's so many different things coming with this topic, because I don't want to say have realistic expectations. I mean, that's a part of it, right? Because I also believe in magic and miracles and things happening very fast, or connections and serendipity and all that. However, if we have a very solid ground in that clarity, the confidence, the focus, then it's like we have a foundation, right? So if you have a dream, but you don't have the foundation of what is required, almost on an energetic and physical aspect every single day, right? You might be like, we can get carried away. So the carried away looks like, oh my God, there's this and 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 this. And there's a sense of excitement. And then the this and this and this and this can build so much that it takes us into overwhelm. So, Katie, what are some ways that you like to kind of guide people in that? Like, you don't want to kill their dreams, right? Because we're here to like nourish and nurture people's dreams. And we want them to have the energy to fulfill that. Like, what does that look like for you? Maybe we can both like share stories of what that looks like so that you're not really, you don't want to squash someone's dreams, and we want to take precise, steps towards it so that it's not so much like sometimes when it gets that really overwhelmed, it's like throwing spaghetti at the walls. I know you did a
Yeah.
post on that. Like, are you
Yeah.
throwing spaghetti at the wall, or
Yeah.
are you taking, it's not always logical. The steps aren't always logical, but we want a foundation of like energetic congruence almost.
Yeah, and persistent action, right? So it's like if you're 20 feet ahead, right? If you're climbing the mountain and you're looking at the peak of the mountain and you're like, wow, that's so far away. I don't even know how I'm going to get there. It's like almost, it's coming back into what's the next step that I can take in this moment today that I know that is aligned for me, right? We can say no in quotations because we never know everything and, you have no idea, right? But you can go, I know that if I go out to this thing and I need another client, that's going to get me another client. Or maybe it gets me 2 clients or 3 clients or whatever it is. Or I know that this is not working for me. So how can I shift it and make it work better for me? So it's almost like reeling you back into where are you right now? Because if you have a big vision and you say, well, I have $1 million, I want to make over $1 million a year, and that's your vision. Well, where are you right now? You're at $1,000 a month. You're at $100,000 a month, right? You're closer, right? If you're at, you're at $50,000 a month. It's like, well, okay, so what is the next step that's going to take you from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 to phase 4? And if you're on phase 1 and you know that you're there, you got to go into phase 2. Right? So I think overwhelm actually sometimes happens is when we actually get lost too much inside of the dream, and then we become a daydreamer. It's almost like the dreamer's disease, right? Almost like that. It's not really a disease, but it's like you get so lost in the daydream, you're sitting and daydreaming, and you're not able to take the next step. So usually, what I ask is, what's the next step that's going to be clear for me that is going to take me towards that vision? And usually something
Yeah.
drops in like, well, you know what? Your systems are a little bit wonky. Let's get clear on that. Or your offers actually need to be revamped. Maybe you need to raise your prices. Maybe you need to change
Yeah.
your offers. Like maybe you need to change the platforms you're speaking on. Maybe you need to change a functioning inside of your clinic or your office or your virtual office that's not working for you anymore. So it's like you can zoom. Sometimes we zoom too far out and then we're not able to see like the next step. So it's like start to see and pull yourself back and going like, okay, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. But what is one thing I can do today or this week or this month that's going to bring me more of what I want? And when you bring more of what you want, you're going to get more of that. Because if you go into more overwhelm, like, oh, I guess I can't do anything anymore. I'm just going to sit on the couch and veg out because now I'm overwhelmed and I feel like my capacity is spent. That's not going to serve anybody. So it's almost like getting into that like level of performance of yourself. Do one thing every day that's going to make you better towards that thing instead of thinking about, well, I'm not there yet or I'm not getting to my vision. You're just going to get lost in the weeds there.
Yeah. And those, it makes me think of, the connect the dots with the numbers.
Yeah.
It feels very much like you're like, oh, there's 50. So you like jet over from 20 to 50. And then you're like, oh no. And then you're like, go over to 40. And it's like, it doesn't make the shape because we're so ahead and we get excited about the next thing. And exactly like what you said, Katie, I love this because we're in this right now with a client. And I was thinking like, wow, the other thing overwhelm can really provide you with is, are my prices congruent with what I'm really creating? So that came from, when there's not always does overwhelm mean you need to raise your prices or investigate your prices. It can be an indicator that there is an incongruence in the pricing, right? So I love that. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I hadn't quite thought of it in that way. And again, we're not really saying, this is not always true, but it can be like, wow, is the work I'm putting out congruent with what I'm asking for? And that can be one level of that quick question. And it could be like, oh my gosh, no. And then the relief of like, okay, well, what would I feel really happy and comfortable to charge? Like a doubling. I like to keep the body in check. So, oh yes, I could receive that. Oh yes. Cause sometimes if we're like, I know when I moved online, I doubled my pricing and I lost the confidence that I could really sell at that price. And it took me a while to really embody that price. And so I like to use a similar, what feels good with your body as well. Because if we can't receive it, then it's going to be difficult. Now, the overwhelm can be like, oh, just like that simple question, what would assist in that next step for the dream? And then are my prices congruent? Because sometimes we can be, out there doing all that. So
Yeah. And I do think that that's a great method to like pull you back, right? Because if you're in your body, you're present ultimately. You're not
yeah,
in your head, because if you're in your head, sometimes you're usually in the past or you're often in the future. So if you come back in your body, you're present with what is in this space right
yeah,
now. And it's like, so where do I go from here? And from here is like, yes, most of the people that listen to us like to be in integrity with themselves, with their prices, and with their offers, what they're putting out there in the world, their services. You can call it your products, whatever it is. It's an offering, right? It's an invitation
yeah,
into your world and an invitation into the experience and the results that you provide a customer, right? Or a client or a patient, or however we name that person on the other end of the receiving end of what you're putting out there in the world. Now, the other thing I find is talking about the overwhelm piece. The other thing I feel like people go into is into frustration. So
hmm
it's like overwhelm and frustration are sort of like brothers, right? That kind of fight with each other. It's like either I'm overwhelmed and my nervous system is overloaded and I can't, really function, and I'm having, this sense of like, oh, it's just too much. It's just too much. I don't think I can handle it. Or we can go into more of frustration and be like, oh, it's not working. Oh, I'm behind. Oh, I can't. This thing is not working. Oh, and then this thing broke and that thing broke and that thing, and then we get into like nothing is working and I'm freaking out. So it's like we can just pull you back into like what is right now. And then you can go back into things like gratitude, into things like service, putting yourself into service, and into things like what is working for you right now. Because I want to
yeah,
guarantee if you're in frustration or overwhelm, if you pull yourself back in to your body and into your mind, right? We can say body and mind are never disconnected, but into the present state, what is working in your business? And then start to focus on that, not what's not working and what's broken, and getting like neurotic about these things that need to be fixed. But look at, it's like when your house, right? Like a metaphor of like when one thing goes in your house, like hopefully it's not the hot water because that always sucks, but it's like one thing's in your house, like, oh, the sink is kind of drippy. I like, and then you start to focus on that. Oh, that sink's really bothering me. Oh, I got to fix the sink. And then you just let the sink drip, right? Like, it's like, oh, you still have a roof over your head. You still have food in the thing. You're still the bed. Your AC is working, all these things. But we can get so damn focused, and this is sort of human, on the thing that's not working and get neurotic about that thing, that we forget all the wonderful things that are around us that we've already achieved in our business. So I want you to think about that for our listeners right now. Like when you feel overwhelmed and you feel frustrated, can you pull yourself back into your body, into the present, and go, God, a lot of stuff is working out for me and things are going well, but I'm so focused, right? You can say, like, sort of a little bit laugh at yourself, like, oh man, I am so focused on that damn drippy soft this faucet that I can't even see everything that's going well. And it's almost like we have to shift, right? Shifting the gaze, shifting it
yeah.
back into, let's figure out how we downregulate the overwhelm and downregulate the frustration. And then coming back to that space is honestly where more clarity comes and more confidence. That's where you get the aha. Those silent moments where like, that's why. And then you can redirect and then go into more of what is working for you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much because um, frustration is very common. And just like Katie said, I look at frustration in Chinese medicine as once we clear the frustration, the liver energy of like possibilities and regeneration come, right? So it's like and some people say like, what's the opposite of frustration for you? Harmony, peace, flow, ease, like whatever it is. Then we're like, frustration can almost be like, oh, once I can like address this and clear it, now I can like really let things open up and flow in. And so it's all like, it's funny. So right now my Wi-Fi is like, not working. And I'm like, and so I'm like, okay, as we're talking, I'm like, okay, well, what is working? Well, I have my light working and my speaker works and I have this nice computer, and like literally asking for Wi-Fi contribution instead of being like wanting to, scream and pull my hair out. So it's,
Strangle the Wi-Fi.
yeah, which is like not really possible. So it's really such a gift to have. I actually like noticing frustration with my clients, because then I can say, let's talk about that. Let's look at what's frustrating you so that we can clear the energy of that, because on the other side of that frustration is so much. And it just like Katie said, what you focus on, you get more of. And it reminds me of in high school, I would have a friend and she would spill her coffee, and then from the rest of the day was
It's
done.
ruined.
It was like donezo. It was like a catastrophe. She was the
Yeah.
girl that like catastrophe just followed, because if she started her day off bad, it just followed her. And you'd be like, oh gosh, here we go. Like you knew as a friend, like, here we go. And it was like literally,
Yeah.
it was a train wreck. And you couldn't, like, I couldn't change her mind or her points of view, but you just knew, you're like, hold on tight. And it's true, because and it takes skill. So if you can't get right in and be like, I should focus on this, like find one thing. Like I'll be like, wow, I have a chair to sit in and there might be chaos around me, but I have a desk to sit at and I have a pen and pencil, and it might feel really cheesy at first. So you're just like, I have one client, one paying client. Cool. What would it take to have two? And then you ask that energy and you're like, wow, I could have, and I just got body tingles, like, wow, I could have that. Great. So this idea of I'm working towards a certain number of VIP clients, and you might say maybe you're halfway there and you're like, wow, I don't have that many yet, and I have so many more than I did last year, right? Or and I have, this time last year I only had one and now I have seven. Like, oh my gosh, like can you congratulate yourself for like that growth, right? So it really is, I want to kind of bring us back from that energy of overwhelm, and really being, I think this is something I know this is something Katie and I are really great at, like bringing the efficiency, the clarity, the confidence to what's our target, and what's one step. I will always simplify it. What's one step I can take today to bring me towards that target? And kind of I almost like clear the field, like clear these, okay, there's this person and this thing and da, da, da. I'm like, okay, land, feet on the earth, breathing into, like, even hand on heart. Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. That acknowledgement is huge. What's one step I can take today that's going to bring me closer to my big vision?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, and it's huge, right? Because the truth is you're gonna get overwhelmed. You're gonna feel frustrated in your business. You're gonna have spaces where
Yes.
you go into something and it's gonna feel like too big or you don't have the capacity. How do you deal with it? How
Yeah.
do you refocus from that? How do you reset from that space? And I think that's the most important thing, because otherwise you're just going to close up shop. You're going to close the book on that chapter and you're not going to continue as an entrepreneur. So it's more about knowing that overwhelm can happen, knowing that you might feel frustrated or irritated because life's going to happen, things are going to happen. And then how do you come back from that going, this is not forever. We get into the all or nothing. No, it's going to be forever and ever. And it's always going to be this way and this and that. It's like, no, actually, like stop that thought process and go back into, I'm overwhelmed right now. How can I move forward from this overwhelm or lack of clarity, of lack of confidence? How do I move forward? Those are the skill sets that you need. I'm going to quote unquote, quote, you should, you quote, quote, you want to, right, develop as the entrepreneur, because that is a cultivation of you. And that's how, that makes the difference, I think, between an entrepreneur that quits after 5 years and one that's in it to win it for like until retirement. So what are you doing? We'll ask our listeners, like, what are you doing on a daily to cultivate that? And how do you pull back and reset yourself in a space of overwhelm or frustration or irritation? How do you come back from that? So we'll leave you with that question to start to think about today. And if we'd love for you to leave a review on here. If you like our podcast, it really helps us, know that we're doing a good job. And we love to actually hear feedback from our listeners too, as well. And thanks for listening, guys. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Dreams to Dollars podcast. If you vibe with our content and want to find out how to work with us, check out our show notes for the links.